Wonderful. All right, well, welcome everybody. We'll call this meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board to order a little after 3 o'clock today. Thanks all for being here. Looking forward to my first meeting as chair. Bear with me. Bob's going to kick me if I do anything wrong. So, but yeah, let's get started. So for the roll today, we've got myself, Ryan Uris, here's chair. Bob Wachtel to my right is vice chair. Britt Arneson is here. Peter Dracos. Corey Simonson is absent. He emailed that couldn't make it. Same with Jeff Schmerker. And Gene Schmitz is here. It's like I don't see Danny Tenenbaum, but he might still be coming. And then Robin is here. Robin Welling, right? Is your last name? Perfect. All right. Perfect. And do we need to introduce? And we've got Ben. Ben Weiss is here as well. And then we have some guests that will be talking to us later. Brian Hensel from Streets and Jenny Merriam, City Communication Director. All right. Let's take a look at the previous minutes from our December meeting. Does anybody... Well, first we do the motion first, right? No. Okay, not for this one. Never mind. All right, so take a look. Is there anything we need to update about the minutes from last meeting? All right, not seeing anything. Look good to you guys? Perfect. Look good to me too. So, thanks for putting those together, Logan. And the meeting minutes from December 5th are approved. And then the current agenda. Does anybody have any additions to the agenda? Anything we need to move around? All looks good. All right. I wanted to mention one thing Danny had emailed. And Ben, I don't know if this will come up in anything or if we just want it to be part of an update, but just the news of or an update of the Hawthorne School annexation that happened last night. Is it? What's that? Yeah, it's in the city. Right. Yeah, it did. I just didn't know if we wanted to add it to our agenda to chat about or just mention or.
I can bring it up in the update.
Sounds like a plan. Awesome. All right. So no additions to that. We'll continue with the current agenda. And is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll keep cruising along. Sergeant Greg Amundsen emailed and said he could not make it this afternoon. So we'll go right to 6.2 and we've asked Brian Hensel from the Streets Division to come and chat with us a little bit about snow removal and to the board and Brian too. When Ben and I were talking about the agenda, I remember the time you came previously and as a newer board member at that time, it was really informative to just hear about what you guys do and how you guys prioritize different routes. And so we've got a lot of new faces and thought it'd be good for them to hear that info too. So thanks for coming today. Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and you guys feel free to invite me. I don't keep track of when your meetings are, so if there's ever an issue you'd like me to attend one of your meetings, by all means, just let me know. So one thing in my line of work, the more people that I can communicate with, oftentimes it makes my life much easier. So if I remember correctly, there was a question or if you guys wanted me to work on or address how we work on the bike lanes, is that the process or go through it in our snow plan? Is that what you guys are thinking, or everything in general? I would say maybe a little bit of general and then
everything.
Definitely, definitely the bike lanes. That'd be great.
Those of you that have been on the board for a while have probably heard me, or if you watch local news, I've had the unfortunate opportunity to see me on TV, probably way too much. I apologize for that. So the city has a priority system that I've discussed on numerous occasions that we prioritize all of our operations for snow with putting our resources on the main routes first to get the most traffic. And then we go to priority twos, which are primarily bus routes, streets in the hills, or those that have curves. And then also we get into threes, which are a lower volume, yet still higher than what it would be considered a normal residential, or they may have some hills to them or some other characteristic that would demand a little bit higher priority. And then finally we have the residentials, which are typically flat, low volume residential streets. And so we prioritize all of our resources. When we get snowstorms, we do the ones first. Usually when it quits snowing, we'll get off the ones, then we can go to the twos, and so on down the line as we progress. One thing to keep in mind is that when it starts snowing, we usually don't even get done with our ones until it quits. Okay? That's how it works. I just don't have enough people to do anything else. And it makes sense also in that a lot of the times, well, most of the time, if we get a long duration snow event, our guys will go plow the ice, everything looks good. 2 hours later, it looks like we weren't even there, right? Okay, so in conjunction with that, according to the bike lanes, most of the actual bike lanes, they're on priority ones. So the guys will plow them in conjunction with their normal priorities, okay? We also have a dedicated truck that has a de-icer on it and a plow that they will also do the bike lanes in conjunction with the priority ones, okay? So they're being done. The problem is that what affects melting snow and clearing streets as much as or more than us is the actual vehicle traffic itself. Okay, by the fact that vehicles are moving on the street, they create friction, they move snow over in and out of the wheel paths, and that actually makes the streets clear and dry. Have you ever noticed that? I'm sure you have. Okay, so that amount of traffic oftentimes helps us on these main routes. Okay, but still, if you get a heavy snow event, you know, it's still, we won't get off them until it's over. So that being said, with what's the challenge with the bike lanes and the ped crossings, everything is that there's nowhere near the amount of traffic, smaller wheels, it's not possible to get all those ped crossings, all the bike lanes, we can't get them free and clear like that. I have limited resources as it is. We struggle to get it clear for vehicles. And it's kind of one of those things is I can only do what I can do with what they give me and what I have. And it boils down to is that, you know, every person that works at the city or runs a division will tell you they need more money. And I am no exception. I can do a lot more if I had a lot more money. And then those decisions are they're not made by me or Jenny, they're obviously made by council people, administration. I mean, I can tell them and I can suggest things that I would like to have. And, you know, I got a wish list that's huge. And I would like to have, you know, 5 to 10 more plows and more guys any time of the year. I mean, wait till pothole season shows up. So it's kind of one of those things is my guys, we've been working overtime every snowstorm. I got everybody I can get working overtime on all this stuff. And with the priority snow plowing that we have, and you guys have seen the berms and clearing the crossings for those. And we're just about done doing center berms. And center berms, I don't even get to those until the priority plowing is done. So those center berms, that's a big job for us. And that's a big issue for pedestrians. Bike lanes, not so much, because usually the center berms are out of the way. Left turns are difficult for everybody, including us, but it's a big job. I mean, these big snow events, it's a lot of work for us. And we're finally getting caught up with our priority plowing and our snow berms. We're getting there. I still got a whole bunch to do up in Lincolnwood. We still have a few crossings to do here and there. And now we're getting into flood operations. So now my guys have been focusing on opening as many storm drain inlets as we can get. And we have a priority system for those too. Through the years, we've identified places in storm areas, drainage, bottoms of drainages where we know we can have trouble. And so we prioritize those ones and get those done first. And then we move through the town and try to open up as many as we can. And we're doing as much of that as we can do. One thing too with the bike lanes, I guess let me go back a little bit. You guys have probably seen the blades out working, the big road graders. We'll even send on the priority ones, once the guys are out plowing with the truck plows, this last snowstorm hit us on, well, both of them hit us on weekends, which are tough. I had graders out plowing bike lanes. Because the truck plows, one thing with those is that, we have big truck plows. You guys have probably seen those, right? Well, the amount of down pressure they can exert oftentimes will not take the snow down to bare asphalt. It's the vehicles, remember, that can do that for us. So what happens is, between the plows not getting the full down to the dry asphalt, and then the vehicles, their wheel paths shoving snow back and forth, and that ends up in the bike lanes, us plowing it into the bike lanes and then plowing it out, it accumulates snowpack. I'm sure all of you have seen that. So then I'll send the blades out, and they could actually rip the asphalt out. They can put enough pressure down, I could rip it all out. I obviously don't want to do that. They can be held on a chip seal. So my operators, they can adjust that down pressure, whereas they're not tearing up asphalt, but getting as close as they can to get as much of that snowpack up as possible, okay? So you can imagine, what they're faced with amongst, operating amongst traffic and trying to get it pushed over. And then we come to the unfortunate situation here where we've had enough snow, we were running out of room for berms. Have you guys noticed that? Unfortunately, there's places where bike lanes, we have no choice but to use it to store snow. That's unfortunate. I try to be as accommodating as we can, and if we can give half, oftentimes that's pretty good. And sometimes that's not even possible in some of these locations. So it's I want everybody to know that, we're out there doing everything we can with what I have available. And I'm always open to listen to constructive feedback. And, if you guys got some ideas, by all means, let me know. And I try to be as responsive to requests as we can. Albeit I try to stick to the priorities. That's what we do. That's why it's in place. So, any questions on that? Did I miss anything? Those of you who have heard me before, help me out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if 5th, 6th road dike goes through, how does that impact you as far as plowing snow? Is it gonna be the same kind of system as you currently have? Or are you gonna have to do something special?
So so help me on 5th and 6th. I've heard several different plans and ideas, and I've been meaning to chip seal it, but I can't chip seal it until So could I answer that once we know for sure what we're gonna do?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine they'll be priority ones, and they're priority ones now.
Curb to curb width would not change.
Right, right.
Yeah. But for the majority of the long stretches between Higgins and Russell, it would be a single travel lane with a wider bike lane, more room in the parking lanes as well, so that they're not as close to,
Sure.
mirrors aren't as close to the travel lanes. And then at the signalized intersections, particularly at Orange, they widen out actually to 3 lanes where there are 2 today.
Gotcha.
There would be a dedicated left lane, right lane, and center lane. We're still not even at the point of making a decision on that, so you got a little time.
If that was the case and there's more room for me to store snow, that's great. That helps everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm hesitant to give you a for sure, but
Yeah.
these narrow streets, they're tough for us. When we get this much snow, I run out of room, and then you throw in people clearing their own driveways, sidewalks, vehicles, parked or mailboxes. I'm glad to see it melting. This helps us a bunch.
So, where I grew up in Massachusetts, they do a parking prohibition on odd and even days with whenever a snowstorm's coming, so that they can plow right up to the curb and get that snow out of there. And it's much more denser. The on-street parking is even more utilized than it is here. People deal with it. Has that been considered or thrown around as a?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing to keep in mind, Ben, as you probably know, we are not allowed to plow snow on sidewalks. We try not to, believe me. There are a few places where we struggle with it, but I'd say for the most part, we do a pretty good job with it. So in those cases, if there was a parking prohibition and the council and administration wanted to take that on, absolutely it would help. However, if I don't have a boulevard or I don't have enough street width to push the snow, it isn't going to help me. So on the priority ones, there's really not much, I mean, yeah, there's places there's on-street parking. But if the sidewalk's right up against the curb, I still got to use the parking lane to store the snow. So then, once that's in place, then people say, well, where do I park my car now? You got a giant snow berm there. Okay, so the other option is then I plow to the center, and we've seen the issues that the center berms cause, right? And then, yeah, people aren't real fond of those either. People like to think they can drive over them with their cars. I caution against that. Even if you have four-wheel drive, I caution against that. Okay? For us, it's a matter of width, and for you folks too. I need room to store the snow. People need room to park their cars. Bikes need room to bike. So I think it would be great in some instances where there's boulevards, heck yeah. Could there be other issues involved with it? Of course.
Just want a clarification. When you have the graders out, you say to clean the bike lanes down to the asphalt, down to the pavement?
As close as they can get.
Right.
Yeah.
So are those scraping it toward the curb or
Yes.
away from the curb, toward the curb?
Yes.
So
yeah.
it still ends up against the curb, okay.
As best we can. So
Right.
sometimes when the berms get this big, I mean, there's places where they were only able to get you about a foot because we can't get on the sidewalk, remember?
Yeah.
And so when I'm trying to clear that over, it's a fine line, and they got to go real slow. And that's the other thing, the blades can go slow, and they have a lot more control with that side-to-side movement on the moldboard and also the down pressure. So that's why I like to use them in that capacity. They don't go as fast, but then they have a lot more control on where that berm ends up.
I just want to say, in general, I mean, I was here last winter and driving a lot and biking a little bit, and same thing so far. I think the crews are doing a really good job. Personally, I understand, and I think most people driving understand that, first of all, there's not that many bikes on the road anymore. And when they are, I think most people understand that a cyclist, if the bike lane isn't clear or if it's not a bike lane street, that they're going to be driving where there's actually hard pavement. They don't have to deal with packed snow or ice. I've had no trouble with people slowing down and waiting to go around me. So I know that may not be the case for everybody. I usually have a flashing rear light going, especially on cloudy days. And so it's nice to get them cleared, but with the lower volume of bikes, I think I don't know that it would be overall, for the overall population, be the biggest priority. I think you guys are doing a good job as is.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I think some of you, Ben, were part of that email chain where I was proud after we had a difficult weekend over Christmas and over New Year's, and I had those graders out on Monday. I had every available person working overtime through Christmas and through New Year's Eve. I had everybody I could get. And then Monday I had the blades out. And I think I don't know about you, Ben, but I don't remember checking Christmas, but on New Year's, I had one call on Reserve Street. That was it for a bike lane issue, and we got on it as soon as we could. So that may not be a perfect indication, because I know there were places that the bike lanes had packed snow on them and they were in tough shape. But normally, that's a pretty good record, is that folks know who to call, and I only had one. So I think that maybe folks there's some understanding of what we can do and what we can't do. So that was kind of good to see.
Well, one of the things this board has helped with in the past, Wayne was struggling to continue to provide the level of service that he was, because the city grows and he has more and more paint responsibilities, and there's more bike lanes and more crosswalks, and so to help bicyclists and pedestrians, he needed more money. Still, that department still needs more money. He made a case to this board. He presented them with what it might take to keep those refreshed more frequently. And then this board was able to write a letter of support for increasing Wayne's budget to the mayor and city council. Now, it's still ultimately their decision, the administration's decision on what to do with that. But my guess is that this board would be very interested to see kind of a hard proposal of, hey, if I had X amount more dollars that could get me 2 more trucks and 5 more guys, we could do the bike lanes this much faster. We could clear the spaces we could guarantee that the spaces at crosswalks were clear so that people walking and using wheelchairs would be able to get across, or whatever the issue is. I think that there would be some interest in the off-season, of course, in putting those numbers together. You never really have an off-season, but
No.
not in the snow season. Putting those numbers together to present and have this board discuss, and maybe even recommend then to the administration that that you get what you need to fill those gaps.
You bet. I mean, unfortunately, my toys are expensive. Snow plows alone are up about 18,000 just for a plow. With a truck, add another 120. You know, street FTEs, I think, what are we, around 75? I'd love to have about 5 to 10 more crew, plows, more de-icer, you name it. I mean, the more money I get, the more people I have, the more plows I have, the better service I can provide. Unfortunately, those decisions are not up to me, but you know, I hate to say that. Yeah, it's a large part is a matter of money.
Just mainly a comment rather than question. Wanted to express my appreciation of the crews out there on Bancroft particularly. I live at the corner of Livingston and Bancroft, so I see a lot of the plows going down Bancroft and keeping that area clear. And especially the blade crews have been very good about keeping the snow from getting back up on the sidewalk, and I definitely appreciate that. And we've kind of compromised and build that heap up in half of the bike lane and keep things going. But Bancroft has been very, very good to bike on.
I appreciate
we
that.
all have our frustrations if some areas get slick, but we just have to deal with it.
How about one thing too, I would ask the board, one of the big changes this year was, if you've noticed, on Southwest Higgins from Patty Canyon down to High Park, we changed that to a center plowed street. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. That was the source of, heated conversation with myself and another gentleman. And he was always pestering me to do that. And I finally said, all right, there was some, not only bike lane issues, there was some adjacent property owner issues, there was also some drainage issues. And so I thought, all right, let's try it. So I shifted it. I think it's working better. I don't have the flooding issues that had happened in the past, which was my main reason for changing it, because when we were plowing all the berms to the side, we were blocking the storm drain inlets as you go towards Dixon and down further. And so far, I think that's helped quite a bit, but it also, I think, gave more room for the bike lanes. And then the part that I didn't want to do was that more center plowing, more snow I got to pick up. That's the other issue with it. So I was real hesitant with it. So it's kind of, if I do more here, something else has got to give there. And I think it's better so far. I hate to add more center plows, but you know, I don't like flooding out streets either. So I think it's been an improvement. And I've heard positive input from this gentleman, actually, who always was talking to me about it. So if you guys haven't seen it, let me know what you think if you get a chance.
A couple things. One, I was walking across the Orange Street Bridge today, and you guys were cleaning up the center berm, and it was very loud, but it was beautiful to see the efficiency. Actually, it was like one truck just after another. They must have gone through 10 trucks of dump trucks full of snow while I crossed the bridge, and so I was impressed by that. And a comment that I have, everybody says that they want better transportation in this city, and it seems like such a cost-effective way to achieve that by just giving you what you need. So I just want to echo what Ben said, that, you know, rather than building millions of dollars worth of road projects, just actually cleaning the snow off the roads, I think would benefit everybody. And, you know, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I just wanted to say that. I think that, and then the question I have this year, I noticed it especially, there's all these beautiful new ADA Crosswalks, and it's like you're walking and you're about ready to go, and then you have to cross this giant berm, and the sidewalk is obviously the responsibility of that person, but how far do they have to then give you a little trench to walk through on your way to the street after their sidewalk ends?
Bert, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't get into that so much. If it's in the downtown area, I need to give credit and kudos to the clean team and MDA and Linda's folks, those guys, they do a tremendous job down there. They may be able to tell you what they do. I don't know if there's a specific ordinance on it, on how far you're supposed to go. I don't know, Ben, maybe you know. I don't.
I don't.
We have some folks that administer the sidewalk program in the city. You may want to reach out to them, Mickey and Brad. They could maybe tell you. It's something I don't have to deal with. I have to deal with sidewalks, Britt, when my guys plow snow on them.
Yeah.
And in our snow plan, we have 24 hours to get back to it. So I make every effort not to do that if we can. So, sorry.
Britt, I'm pretty sure it would be hard to tell property owner that they have to go beyond the curb to get that berm out to help clean the streets. And obviously with the mechanization that you have and time constraints and all, it's not really something you can undertake mechanically. So pretty sure we're stuck with having to rely on the good heart of a property owner to help people out get across. I don't know if there's any way of trying to get other community volunteer. I'm just trying to think outside the box here, getting other community volunteers from local schools or whatever to volunteer groups to come out, especially if there's handicapped people that need to get through there a bit more, to maybe get kind of a a forum for clearing assistance for some of these maybe particularly problematic berms at crosswalks.
And we do some of them too when we can. When we're not doing snow operations, we try to focus downtown. But I'm sorry, on the big center berm, we try to clear the crosswalks back as far as we can. And that's our responsibility. That's not the adjacent property owners. But it's kind of the same deal too, where the plows go by and even the blades, if there's a car that was parked there and the blades can't get up to it and they can't take it down to bare asphalt, which is very frequently, you'll have that snowpack resulting along the curb lines, and we just can't get it. And so we rely on the BID with their clean team, and those guys do a tremendous job. But we struggle when that center berm gets big, even opening up the crosswalks, because if we're not picking it up, the snow has to be piled back onto the pile. Well, then you have sort of this big teardrop shaped thing, and then you can encroach even onto the driving lanes, and we'll go from a 4-lane down to a 1.5 or 1 1/4. And so we get them as soon as we can and push them back as far as we can. But that there's even a lag time. When you get a big snowstorm the next day, we may not have even gotten to them yet. And so there may be times where I see people having to go over the berm and we got to get on those. It's just I can't get to them as quick as I'd like to on many occasions, and that's one of them.
Well, just to follow up, I think it's done pretty well downtown, but in the neighborhood areas, there's definitely, and then the melting and the puddle, and I call it sidewalk roulette. I love walking in the winter because biking is too scary for me in the winter. But they do a really good job of plowing the trail. So I guess I think maybe someday down the line, when you do have your bigger budget, there could be priority walking routes where we just chalk it up and say, well, here, 3rd Avenue or whatever, we can't guarantee every homeowner's going to get that curb clean. That maybe the city could do it someday in a bright fantasy future.
Yeah, and that probably wouldn't be me. The trails are parks. I have to give credit to them. That's as far as I know. Traffic Services does a lot too, though. And Parks does also. They do a lot of sidewalks too that the city's taken on, so.
One of the other pieces of background I want to provide is that Brian calls a meeting with a bunch of us in the fall every year, but hopefully before the snow flies. At least as long as I've been on, we've gotten to it before every time. And so it's Parks and Traffic Services and Streets, Engineering, the Parking Commission, and the GIS folks, because we want to look at the map every year again and say, okay, did any new roads get built? Does anything elevate in its priority? Anything drop in its priority for any reason? An example that caused a little confusion this year was Mary Avenue through the mall. When we had the meeting, construction wasn't yet done, and so it wasn't the city's property yet. And then sometime between when that meeting and when the snow flew, the city did take ownership of that, and so there was maybe a little confusion. I don't know if you were down in that area, but a little confusion about Mary Ave. But now that's on the schedule and probably went from being not even a priority to now maybe a priority 2 or something.
It is, it's a 2.
It's a 2.
And actually, my driver who has that area, he had told me he had plowed it as a 2 even prior to all that.
Really?
Yeah, and when you get that much snow, like I said, Ben, we don't get to the 2s and.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing I did mention also, when those storms hit us on a weekend, on a Friday afternoon, I'm relying on overtime folks, and I'm not at full staff, and I worked everybody I could through the weekend on Christmas and on New Year's, and that's a struggle when they hit us. And the guys, I worked them a minute, at the most I can work them 14 hours and they get 8 hours of break. I don't do 16, I do 14, that's enough to be in a truck. I had all hands on deck, everything I could get. And so when Monday starts, then we can start getting into finishing up, but it takes time. And so yeah, it's a 2 now, long story short.
Yeah. So I just brought that up, not to talk about that specific location, but just that we are trying as best we can to communicate. And the reason the traffic services and parks are there is because it's parks' responsibility to maintain some of the, well, all of the sidewalk adjacent to parks and all of our commuter trails, the Bitterroot and the Milwaukee, and the Mary Avenue Trail Extension, and a couple other, the Northside Greenway. There's a couple other Priority 1 trails as well. Well, Traffic Services also has some responsibility. Usually it's sidewalk. An area such as the sidewalk on Hillview Way, adjacent to that long kind of open area. That's kind of an unreasonably long amount of sidewalk to expect the adjacent property owner to be responsible for, so Traffic Services has that. We do the sidewalks leading down to the Orange Street underpass, going under the railroad tracks. A few other places, and so in having this meeting, we're able to kind of horse trade a little bit, and Chad Pancake will say to Morgan at the park staff, hey, we're already going to be doing the Miller Creek roundabout. We can do this other bit of parkland for you if you can handle this bit of sidewalk for us. And so we're able to cover everything we can. But even this year, the city size is increasing to the point where neither Morgan nor Chad can guarantee that they will even meet the city's ordinance about when, snow needs to be removed by 9 a.m. the day following a snowstorm. And they have so much kind of linear footage to plow and keep clear that with their current staff, they can't even guarantee that they can get there. They're working as hard as they can, and they're there, they're there by 11, say, instead of by 9, but technically they're not even meeting that. So there's a lot of coordination happening and a serious effort to make it as uniform and as equitable as we can, with the big understanding that mobility is impaired for everybody in big snow events.
Awesome. Thanks again, Brian. And I just said one last thing. If folks want to communicate something that's going on, whether it be flooding or cars have pushed snow into a bike lane or whatever, what is the preferred way you'd like us or citizens to?
On our website,
yeah,
there's ways to report potholes, snow issues, and the old-fashioned style. Just call us. That's probably the best bet. Or if you have my email address, feel free to email me. 552-6360, and that's on our website also.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and Ben, call him too. He always knows to get hold of us too. So, all right. Hey, thank you all for letting me show up today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you again for coming.
Yeah, you bet.
I think the one thing I always think of myself and echo to others too is winter travel, whether it be car, bike, walk, whatever you're doing, is it's going to take more time. Take it slow, take it easy, expect delays, expect it to not be a perfect ride or walk or drive. So anyways, but awesome. Well, thanks you guys. So, oh yeah, go ahead, Rick.
I just had a comment. I don't know why I didn't think of this when I mentioned earlier about trying to walk in the sidewalks and the gutters, but this is a good thing about a neighborhood greenway system would be a system of places that were plowed fully in the wintertime for bicyclists and pedestrians. We wouldn't have to plow the entire city perfectly, but if we could just get 4th Avenue or something, or Franklin Street or whatever, the different greenways, if we could have those be pedestrian and bicycle friendly year round, that would be just a wonderful achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
So I had a pretty scary interaction with a school bus this week. So I've been riding, ever since I got back to town from Minnesota. And I had a school bus almost hit me. Like, it came within a foot of me on Higgins. And, for the most part, I've found that cars are pretty understanding in terms of allowing time, just letting me go until there's a safe means for them to pass. But in this case, I had a school bus driver with a school bus full of kids, almost hit me on Higgins, and it was really quite scary. And I ran up, or I rode up to him and I knocked on the door, and he would not open up. He just gave me sort of dagger eyes and drove on. So in a state like Missoula, where you don't have a required, it's true, right, that we don't have a required passing distance. So it just feels like you're really, and this has happened to me now several times, you're just really at a loss as far as what, repercussions can come of that. So could that be a focus of the board, or has that been a focus of the board in the past, really pushing to have a statewide policy regarding safe passing distance? I know it was mentioned at a previous meeting, but I can't remember.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Right. This is, if it's going to be a statewide thing, then it's going to have to be through the state legislature. And as the board, the best we can do is encourage the city to have their lobbyists support that type of a legislative process to go through. And we can individually support Bike Walk Montana. Melinda Barnes does a great job at the state level trying to get those kinds of things through. In your current situation, the issue you just had, what I would recommend, and it's not always easy to file a complaint, but the school buses are under contract with Beach Transportation, and all of the school buses, all of the city buses have a number on them. If you can cite that bus number and the time of day kind of thing, and file an actual complaint with the bus company, I'm sure they'll straighten their bus drivers out. That cyclists have the right to the road, and they need to be given courteous and safe consideration. But as with much of the legal issues around Missoula and trying to have things happen, it's very much a complaint-driven situation. So.
And then same for sidewalks. I've just noticed that. I can't imagine being someone who uses a wheelchair in this city. It just seems like a completely impractical place to live. Just going along major streets, including Brooks, all the sidewalks are snow covered, or the majority of them. And then going along, even some key trail connections like the river trail up to the good food store. I don't know who owns that, but that's full of snow. So I guess my heart just sort of breaks for people who require, who can't just easily clamber over great big snow piles.
For better or for worse, the current system is complaint-based, and it's something that people with mobility challenges or people who choose to bike and walk, I think, are less inclined to complain, maybe, because there are lots of kind of indignities that we've put up with for a long period of time. But that is the way that the system is set up, and in my conversations with city council members especially, that is their encouragement, is please bother us. Let us know that this is something that's bothering you, because we have no motivation or to change it if we don't even know it's a problem. And so there are both policy and practice things that could be changed, maybe, if there's, again, if the instruction is coming from the administration, the elected officials to actually change them, that carries a lot more weight. I just want to say one more thing about the safe passing distance. So the Bike Walk Montana, who Bob mentioned, for the last 2 legislative seasons that has been their foremost priority, to get a safe passing bill through the legislature. And they, first time, didn't even leave the committee. Second time it did, but it didn't ultimately get passed or adopted. I know that the Bike Walk Montana Summit is coming up at the end of March, and part of that will be kind of finalizing their legislative agenda for the following year. Here, the legislature only meets in odd years, and so 2019 is the next legislative season. And so the 2018 Bike Walk Montana Summit, part of that will include determining the priorities for the 2019 season. My guess is that since they've tried twice and gotten a little bit further each time, they will continue with that. But if that's something that you want to see, then I really strongly recommend getting in touch, if not involved, with Bike Walk Montana.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that. Yeah, the summit is the 21st to the 23rd in Bozeman. I'm actually going to be presenting there. And if anybody from the board wants to carpool, I'd be happy to, if they're going to register for it, just let me know. In terms of making the complaint, yeah, it's, I did it not that long ago when I was in Hawaii. There was a laundry delivery truck going around to different condos and hotels and stuff, and I was on a 2-lane road and was passed too closely or tailgated, I forget which, and I followed the guy into a few blocks into the next place where he stopped and made delivery, and tried to talk to him calmly, and he blew me off. And I didn't have anything to write anything down with me, or my cell phone, or I had a cell phone but not with a camera. And so I called my wife, and I just read his license plate number and truck number over the phone to her. And then when I got home, I got in contact with the company and told them the truck and and they said, okay, well, they would be able to find out which driver that was. And they said they would talk with him. And actually, as it turns out, they ended up having their fleet going to a bicycle safety or a safety driving course, especially geared towards driving safely around bicyclists, which was done by a local bike club in Kona, Hawaii. So, if you make a little noise, like Ben said, some good things can happen, and maybe not right away.
All right. Awesome comments, everybody. Let's we'll keep it moving along and go to agenda item 6.3, bicycle and pedestrian program. Ben's going to take it away and lead us through a whole bunch of awesome updates and topics.
Right.
So.
Yeah, rather than just kind of rattle them off the top of my head, I tried to put them on the agenda this time so that I would remember everything, although I still don't quite have formal presentations for them all, so I'm really just going to scoot around Google Maps. So Ryan or Bob or Jean, if you have trouble seeing, maybe you can scoot around the corner. For 5th and 6th Street, Peter alluded to it during the discussion about plowing, and I think most board members know what is being contemplated here, but just as a brief background, for at least the last 5 years, the Riverfront neighborhood has been asking the city to do something different with 5th and 6th Streets, primarily between Higgins Ave to the east and Russell Street to the west. And their assertion is that cars speed on those streets, that there are crashes, particularly side swipes with parked cars due to either poor and inattentive driving or all of the travel lanes being at their kind of minimums and parking lanes. There's the safety concern with pedestrians crossing the street, what's called the double threat, where one lane might stop, but then the other lane, someone goes to pass that stopped car right as you're crossing the street. And then a lack of bicycle connectivity in the eastbound direction, what should be a direct shot to campus, maybe the most biked to destination in the city. And so they came up with a proposed solution, which was turning them into a single lane, thinking that that would be easy and low cost. And while that raised enough questions that we decided it needed to be studied and modeled. One of the reasons is because 5th and 6th Streets belong to the State Department of Transportation. They don't belong to the city of Missoula. And so the neighborhood, the Riverfront neighborhood, with support from this board, successfully lobbied the city to dedicate some funding to studying 5th and 6th, and if something could change there. And so we had the state then make sure that the study was accounting for the things that they needed to account for. So the state told us, well, you need to be sure that the same size trucks that can make the turn today could make the turn after anything that you're looking at, and that any signal timing, if you're playing with that you need to look at the other signals on the same system. And so our signals are not entirely coordinated with each other, but for example, on Higgins, 4th, 5th, 6th, and Brooks are coordinated with each other. On Orange, 3rd, 5th, 6th, and maybe even Beckwith are coordinated with each other. And at Russell, 3rd and 5th are coordinated with each other. And so we hired a consultant, Alta Planning and Design, to evaluate the transportation function and safety of 5th and 6th Streets. What they found is that under current conditions, 5th and 6th Street are operating at about a quarter of their capacity. For reference, 3rd Street carries more traffic today than 5th and 6th do combined. Spruce Street, the same thing. Mount Avenue, Brooks, other places that we think of as one lane in each direction carry more vehicles per day than 5th and 6th do combined. So there's room to spare. Another thing they looked at was crashes. And over 8 years, from 2007 to 2014, there were 277 crashes on 5th and 6th between Higgins and Russell. Most of those occurred at the signalized intersections. So if you remove those, 5th and 6th actually don't have a super high number of crashes relative to other streets that have a fair amount of cars on them. However, when you do look at those crashes mid-block, a lot of them are side swipes, a lot of them are potentially correctable with a reconfiguration of the road. So the modeling looked at 3 different versions of a single lane reconfiguration, narrowing 5th and 6th to a single travel lane in each direction while taking up the curb space, the curb-to-curb space, by widening the parking lanes and by adding buffered bike lanes. And what they found, and then they also looked at 2 different scenarios of converting them back to 2-way roads. And so essentially we had the transportation function and safety analysis, which showed, the modeling showed that one of the 2-way conversions and one of the configurations of a single lane both would work pretty well, meaning that per MDT's requirements, they didn't cause any added delay to the north-south routes or to the 5th and 6th Street. And I'll get into the specifics of how that happens in a little bit. But because a 2-way conversion would require all new signals, all new traffic signals, and a lot more thought put into what happens at at Higgins, where 5th and 6th are one-way, Highway 12. We're not talking about this section. We'd have to put in a lot more evaluation as to how you get one-way traffic to two-way traffic at such a busy urban intersection. That combined with the added cost of putting all new signals, the city council, when faced with the question about a year ago of which one do you want to move forward with in finishing out the contract with Alta, that included getting a detailed striping plan and then paint quantities that we could put a cost estimate together with. City council chose option 1C, which was one of the signal lane configurations. Now, the way that option was able to maintain the levels of service at the signalized intersections was by reducing to a single lane in these long sections, but then widening out to include turn lanes at the intersections. So, for example, at 5th Street, where today there's parking lane, a bike lane right here, 2 travel lanes, and then parking lane, the parking gets dropped about a half a block, and you develop 3 lanes. There would be a left turn lane, a through lane, a bike lane, and then a right turn lane at the corner. And so by having 3 lanes at the intersection, you're able to get the same amount or even slightly more traffic through the intersection, through the green light when that happens. Now, this option also included, and this is kind of fine detail, it also included a minor adjustment to the signals on the corridor such that a little more green time gets added to 5th and 6th. A little bit gets taken away from Orange, Higgins, and Russell. It's taken away evenly with each of the signals on their coordination cycle, and the net result is no significant increase in delay or decrease in level of service. Does everyone know what I mean when I say level of service? I know Peter does, but I know Bob does, and Gene does. But basically the way that the state looks at, the way that the transportation engineering profession looks at how well a intersection is functioning is they ascribe it a level of service based on average seconds of vehicle delay at that intersection. And so if it's less than 10, it gets an A. It's graded A through F. And so under 10 seconds, it's an A. Over 80 seconds, it's an F. And in between there's increments, B, C, D, E, F. And so at E and definitely at F, intersections, especially in an urban environment, are considered failing. And what that means is that the amount of delay that you're waiting will impact the next signal on the line, and so that's where you get gridlock. And so there's a mobility reason to keep level of service high, and in our enclosed valley, there's an air quality reason to keep level of service high and delay low. The more idling you have at an intersection, the worse the air quality is. And so historically, that has been the way to evaluate how an intersection works. And if you get so many cars through it that your delay starts increasing and your level of service starts failing, then you need to look at building a wider intersection to move more traffic. Now, we've kind of learned that only kicks the problem further down the road by 5 or 10 or 20 years. It doesn't actually solve it. And most places in the country and in the world are recognizing that and starting to handle level of service differently, or treat it as just one variable in evaluating how well an intersection works. But in these instances, we've been told by MDT that we can't significantly degrade level of service, and to them significant means a letter grade. We can't decrease the level of service a letter grade at each intersection. So the option that adds a little bit of green time to 5th and 6th and includes turn lanes at the intersections, it accomplishes that goal. It does not significantly impact level of service while significantly improving pedestrian safety, I think driver safety, and of course increasing travel options for bicyclists by adding buffered bike lanes in each direction. So where we're at with this, and the reason that I'm talking about this today, is that we are picking this up again with City Council in about a month. You heard Brian say that he's holding off on chip sealing it. There are some areas of 6th that might need patching, but really both 5th and 6th are ready for chip seals to preserve pavement on those roads. When that happens, they are going to be, all the existing stripes are going to be covered up, and we're going to have a chance to paint it new. And so what we're asking City Council is to say, is this something that you want to pursue implementing? There is a cost difference between implementing option 1C and putting it back as it is today. The cost to put it back as it is today is about $7,000, and that's each year, and that's time and materials. The cost to implement option 1C in time and materials is about $11,500. So the cost difference of about $4,500, that's annually. Included in that, there would be a one-time fee of about $6,000 to upgrade the detection at 5th and Orange to radar. It's currently loops in the ground, but if we're adding an extra turn lane at 5th, you'd need radar to get that. The loops would no longer be working, so that would have to be done up front. So, assuming that, let's say council decides to move forward and recommend this to be striped this way after the chip seal, we then need to go about seeking approval from the Transportation Commission of MDT, a body appointed by the director, the governor. I don't know exactly how they work, but basically 5 people around the state that are not necessarily transportation experts that have the final say in what happens with MDT's roadways. And so we are working kind of behind the scenes a little bit with both the local district folks at MDT and some of the folks in Helena Traffic to try and smooth the way should this move forward. Again, we don't know that it will. It is currently the staff recommendation that we do pursue option 1C for the huge benefits to pedestrian safety and vehicular safety. One thing that council had asked us to look at on top of the transportation function and safety of these roads was potential economic impacts. And all the information I found, it's a conservative estimate that a lane reduction from 2 to 1 has a 19% reduction in crashes associated with it. And so if we, again, removing the crashes at Orange and Higgins and Russell, if we just talk about the ones in between, if we reduce those number of crashes by 19%, over 20 years we would save Missoulians about $1.5 million. And that's just on the kind of AAA numbers that are associated with crashes. If you actually factor in like human feelings and sentiment and then assign a dollar figure to them, it's about 10 times that, or $15 million that this project could end up saving Missoulians. So again, staff has a recommendation. This board has had a strong recommendation. I just wanted to provide you guys with an update as to where we're at with the project and the process, and know to look for it coming up at a Public Works Committee meeting in the not too distant future. My guess is February 7th, but that is not set in stone yet.
And is this going to full council or committee?
It's going to go to committee first and then likely full council. We're still kind of unclear as to what the process is. One of the interesting things, we have a complete streets policy which says that any time that a roadway gets resurfaced, we need to evaluate it for inclusion of pedestrian and bicycle upgrades. And so that's what we've done. We've evaluated 5th and 6th in advance of a resurfacing project for bicycle and pedestrian upgrades. We find that there's very limited potential downside with a lot of potential upside. I don't know what is complicating matters is the fact that it's not a lot of money in the terms of a transportation project. It's a little bit more money than is in the budget of Chad and his normal striping, and so it would require a little bit of increase in budget for him. Also, the jurisdictional questions of MDT being involved. It's not just a straight city project. So
Their jurisdiction ended at Higgins.
Highway 12 ends at Higgins, but they're still primary arterials or secondary
okay.
arterials that are state-owned all the way to Russell.
Okay.
So,
So, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so, so,
The other thing to keep in mind, I guess, is that we, staff and elected officials, are keeping an eye in the long term towards the two-way conversion. That just has a lot more benefit for vehicle speeds, for safety, for potential positive business impacts, and it's something that I think that we would eventually like to move to, but that is just a much bigger project than is capable of being tackled right now.
Ben, the bike lanes, you mentioned that those are going to be buffered.
Yes.
Are they going to be buffered just between the lane and the motor vehicle lanes, or are they going to be buffered to put bikes farther out from the door zone, park cars?
It varies a little bit depending on the block width, but on 5th Street, they're buffered from both. And then on 6th Street, here I can show you, on 6th Street, starting back at Russell, it's wide enough that there is parking here, but I don't think it's wide enough to have a buffer on both sides, so I think it's only on the travel lane side. But then once you get to this side of the railroad tracks, see the road narrows up here, and there's no parking on this side, and so this side, the buffer is only on the driver's side because there's no parking on that side. But the idea is that even if there isn't a painted buffer, that a 6-foot bike lane next to a wider parking lane will be much further out of the door zone than the current 5-foot bike lane next to a 7-foot parking lane.
Given that there's a potential for this to come up to Public Works Committee on the 7th, as you indicated, would you like a member of the board, would it be beneficial for someone here to appear at that meeting whenever it does occur and reinforce our recommendation that we've made previously?
It definitely would not hurt anything, and public involvement is always appreciated, and I think would be helpful. If that is not possible, at the very least, I would recommend this board resending their support for this, maybe to the whole council. Yeah, I don't think that there's need for a new letter of support necessarily, or a new recommendation, but again, if the board wants to do that, that can happen as well.
Ben, just as an aside, I was at a university district neighborhood leadership team meeting last night, and we endorsed what had been written by wrote and signed what document based off what had been written by the riverfront neighborhood.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Jane had mentioned something like that, but I haven't had a chance to talk to her yet.
Yeah, I don't know if this would be out of order to motion to reaffirm our previous document. So, if I'm allowed to, I will so move.
I guess I don't see why not. Bob, do you know?
We cannot act on an item that's not on the agenda.
Gotcha. Okay. But I think we can simply say that, we'll resend the letter that was previously adopted and approved by the board, and see if we can get somebody over at the Public Works meeting to support it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, moving on. The next item on the agenda is a Milwaukee Trail update per the Grove Street development, or what is known as the Colon Ditch property. And so this was one that was in the paper a few weeks ago, and Danny brought it to my attention that the board might want to know about this. So this is the parcel of land in question, and basically there is a development proposed for this area that includes a mixture of townhomes and single-family homes, and as part of the development process, this trail will be constructed in this area. So here's the Milwaukee Trail where it continues under reserve. It comes along, am I in the right area? Yeah. Comes along, this is Orchard Gardens here, and then comes out right here. The trail is planned to continue here, where it will cross the bridge and onto the island in the middle of the braiding of the Clark Fork. You can see that there's kind of historic path here, and there's even some old piers of old bridge that is there. We even have a preliminary study on how long these spans are, and are the piers in good enough shape to support new beams and new bridge. They are. And so we're also evaluating whether or not the beams from the Russell Street Bridge could be salvaged and then dropped onto here and used as a new bridge. Now, as cool as that sounds, it might be more economically feasible to build all new bridge. There's a lot newer bridge making technology that makes it a little simpler. But ultimately, the trail, Milwaukee Trail, continues across here through this area, and then we're still not quite clear where it will come up, but most likely come up here and then connect with the Mullen Trail, which is along here, so that folks living in George Elmer and 44 Ranch out in these areas would be able to have trail all the way into the center of town. And the trail, the Riverfront Milwaukee Trail, would connect up to the Hellgate School District as well. So Hellgate Meadows, essentially, then, these people would all have trail access coming down here this way. Is that intersection at Mullen signal at Flynn? No. Okay. And there aren't plans for it. A real quick aside, the plan for this neighborhood, there's a collector plan that was adopted maybe in 2006 to kind of build some new wider roads out here. Flynn Lane actually gets kind of decommissioned as the through street. Mary Jane gets built out to Mullen, and that gets a signal signal or roundabout at Mullen Road when that happens. And then Mary Jane also gets built out to Broadway as well. Because currently Flynn is built to a county road standard. Mary Jane is wide enough to be a city collector standard. And Flynn makes these big turns and then hits Broadway at a weird angle. And so yeah, the thought is it can be done correctly and to kind of newer roadway design standards if it's Mary Jane.
So then you have to do a little dog like that.
Well, except that there's trail. The trail already exists here. And so, yeah, this could be a push-button beacon for bikes, maybe, something like that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure the access across Mullen to get people across state.
Yeah. So there was discussion in the paper about this development. Some neighbors are concerned about it for a variety of reasons. It's not my area of expertise. I don't want to speak to that. But the project is, after a reset, is moving forward, and that development includes this trail being constructed, at least to here. And so Parks and Rec has been for years and continues to work on acquiring the properties between here and there and getting the easements required to get up there, and we're getting closer and closer. Any other questions about that? Next item, the CDBG sidewalk project. CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. That's a funding source that is usually reserved to projects related to housing and providing housing. However, last year there were no major housing projects being planned within the grant cycle. And so we were encouraged by, we meaning transportation planning and the city, was encouraged by the new community housing department within the city to apply for CDBG money for an infrastructure project. And so we had maybe about 8 or 10 years ago successfully applied for CDBG money to add sidewalks to Johnson and some other streets in the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood. This time around, the project that we successfully applied for is in the west side, primarily in the west side, and a little bit in the Franklin and the Fort too. So the sidewalks will be on Cowper, extending from Cooley, actually from Stoddard down to Sherwood, and then Sherwood will get completed all the way to Lowell School. This project was selected because, or this route was selected because Cowper is kind of about a middle ground a little bit between Scott and Russell, and it also connects to kind of the highest density of multifamily housing up at the northern end. So the idea is that it provides the connections for the most amount of people between home and school. Unfortunately, we can't continue the project all the way down to Broadway or on Sherwood all the way out to Russell, but it's a great start in a neighborhood that has little to no sidewalk connectivity. In the Franklin of the Fort neighborhood, the project includes a section of Eaton Street between Spurgeon and 10th. Basically, this gap gets completed. It's not shown here, but Spurgeon now all has sidewalk to here, and Eaton has sidewalk all as part of this new development. So it's a bus route. It will connect some of the bus stops. And then 10th is going to be filled in between Eaton and Franklin Elementary School. And then finally, Grant Street between 14th and Franklin School. You'll notice that there's sidewalk here, but none here. There's some here, but none here. These few pieces between 14th and 11th will all get filled in as well. And so, yeah, they were kind of safe routes to school projects. One of the compelling arguments we were able to make in our grant application, or one of the compelling data points we're able to use, is the health map that we have, that the health department has developed, that has layers of different inputs, such as access to WIC services, access to parks and recreation service, access to schools, where the schools are, that sort of thing. And then you can overlay health outcomes, such as percentage of childhood obesity, or percentage of adult obesity, or percentage of generational poverty, that sort of thing. And what you find is that the fewer opportunities to access recreation opportunities or to transport yourself actively, the higher likelihood of poorer healthy outcomes. And so we were able to basically draw a correlation between lack of sidewalks and negative health outcomes. So this grant is doing a small but important piece of addressing some of those issues. So typically sidewalks are paid for through an assessment to adjacent property owners, with basically about a third of it being assessed to adjacent property owners, with 2/3 being paid for by the city. What this grant is doing is subsidizing the adjacent property owner assessment piece. So those sidewalks are coming at no cost to the adjacent property owners. This project will be happening this summer, and so we have been moving forward on it pretty aggressively. One of the interesting things, even though it is coming at no cost to the adjacent property owners, it's happening in neighborhoods where there aren't a lot of sidewalk projects, and so it's a fairly new experience for a lot of people. So we're making a concerted effort to engage with property owners and do a lot of upfront question asking and answering before designs are even completed, just so that we know what is important to people. Wherever possible, we're trying to maintain existing landscapes and trees. There are definitely some that we've observed that are going to have to come out. That also means that we're having to put in curbside sidewalk in locations, because where we would put in boulevard, there's already existing trees, and we're not going to, we don't want to rip out trees, mature trees, to plant new ones just to put in boulevard necessarily, especially if there are kind of property owner attachments to that landscape. So there's, in the west side especially, there's also topographical challenges that lead to the need to keep sidewalk curbside For example, I don't know how familiar people are with this block here between Phillips and Sherwood on Cowper, but I'll just drop the guy. It is really, really steep. Right here, it just kind of drops off. And so in this location, you can see it's steep on either side too. In this location, the sidewalk is actually going to encroach out in the roadway, effectively narrowing the travel space to our absolute minimums. Parking will have to be disallowed on either side of the street in that location. So we're hoping it'll be traffic calming. It might make snow storage kind of a pain, but I live in this neighborhood and I can tell you that the snow is not being, while the plows are keeping the hill safe, it's not down to the asphalt in these locations anyway. And so yeah, we'll see what happens, but it's been a pretty neat process for me to be working closely with the health department and with engineering to see this project happen. And as we get further into the design process, working with the neighborhoods and working with Parks and Rec to make sure that we're creating a project that is effective in moving people and providing space for pedestrians, but also in kind of maintaining the character and feel of these some of the landscapes around this neighborhood. I want you guys to be knowledgeable, just in case you get questions about this. But like I said, construction will be start this spring, be done sometime by the fall. And our first major public engagement piece is at the end of this month on the 25th. We're having a meeting with all the affected property owners for the west side at the Bistro, an open house in the meeting. Since the Franklin of the Fort pieces are kind of spot fills in an area that has a lot more existing sidewalk, those property owners are being contacted directly by the engineering team to address any challenges or concerns that they might have. Any questions about the CDBG sidewalk project? All right. Moving on, this one's going to be real brief, but a Russell Street Bridge construction update. So this one has also kind of been in the paper, but the project has been let and is out, and they didn't beat the snowfall, but there already some staking has happened along the trail, wherever that is. Yeah, that's been up for a couple months. There's also core drilling maybe has begun in this area, but the plan is that they construct new bridge on this side. They will then route traffic onto the new bridge, and that will be the first season. And then they'll route traffic onto the new bridge and then take down the old one and build there. So just as a quick refresher, and I'm pretty sure there's a website dedicated to Russell Street that you can find out there. But Russell Street is getting widened out to 5 travel lanes, 2 in each direction, and a 2-way center turn lane. There will be a trail under the bridge, developed trail under the bridge on each side of the river. There will be on the bridge, the bike lane and sidewalk will be combined and separated from traffic. And then when you get south of the bridge, the bike lane will be raised. However, unlike North Higgins, there's no on-street parking, so you're not behind any parked cars. And instead of it being a vertical curb, the curb will be beveled so that if you want to make a left turn, you can just, as a bicyclist, you can dip out into traffic and get in the turn lane at a time that's appropriate for you instead of being forced into it at each intersection. At each transit stop, this protected bike lane will go behind the bus stop, and so there will be like a kind of floating island for people to wait for the bus. We did some campaigning and some lobbying to get what's known as a protected intersection. I believe at least some members of the board are familiar with that is at Wyoming. We were unsuccessful in that, and it's kind of still, the 3rd Street intersection has not been fully designed. The first phase is only going to go to Dakota, and I expect that to take, my guess is 3 years. We'll see. But that construction will start as soon as they can in the spring. And I know that there are incentives for the contractor to get this done really quickly. And so they're going to be doing what they can while also trying to minimize the disruption in travel. Should mention also that the Milwaukee Trail will get put in a tunnel underneath Russell Street, and it's a kind of combination of Russell rising a little bit and Milwaukee dipping. We're trying to follow what's called CPTED principles, crime prevention through environmental design, as best we can, so that the tunnel does not become a place that people want to avoid. We want it to be open and feel safe and clean. So that's one of the reasons for raising Russell above, so that you're not dipping deep underground. But I'm not sure if you're going to totally be able to see daylight all the way across, but you do, but reserve is completely over. I mean, you don't grade change at all on the trail on reserve, I don't think. And same thing with orange. Orange is up above. So I don't know that we were able to maintain that direct a line of sight, but it's not, it's definitely not like some tunnels where you go way down into a hole.
Do you know if the images are still of the underpass, excuse me, are still on the Russell Street website? If not, I would say to the board that I do have those images stored away somewhere. If you'd like a copy and can't find it on the Russell Street website, let me know and I can pass them on.
Then you mentioned the safe intersection, is that like doing bump outs? Is that what you're talking about?
What's that?
The safe intersection, is that bump outs or
Ooh, this is an old one. Don't want that. Yeah, they might include bump outs. They're definitely trying to narrow crossing distances across the side streets. Crossing 5 lanes is tricky, but I think there's a center median in places, so it's not just asphalt two-way left turn lane where that turn lane is not needed. There's going to be a planted median and pedestrian refuges in those locations. Let's see. Final EIS is not. Geez, let's look in documents here. Yeah, so as you can see, they're trying to minimize the amount of distance that that you're underground, but also this is west and looking east towards campus and towards downtown. As you can see, there's not enough right-of-way width to include a ramp up to the trail on this side of the street. There is a stairs here. There will be a channel in the stairs to wheel a bike up, but someone in a wheelchair or mobility device would need to, their kind of alternate route there would be to go out to Catlin and come around if that needed to be, if that movement needed to be made. On the other side of the street, however, and I think you can just see it here, there just is not as much room between existing right-of-way or existing buildings really and right-of-way, whereas on this side of the street the city owns from here all the way to the edge of Dakota, so there's a lot more room to provide space.
Yeah, the whole Milwaukee Trail gets pushed out a little bit there, and wide up a little bit.
Yep.
You don't have to go safe.
Ben, I read in Current's newspaper an article that said on the north end of the Reserve Street Bridge, they were gonna kind of widen the river bed out and into that property where the bowling alley used to be. Do you know anything about that?
Of the Russell Street Bridge, you mean?
Yeah, sorry.
I don't know. I do know that currently, I don't know if you've ever been down here, but you can see there's a pathway that people use. I'd say it takes a skilled mountain biker to stay upright through that. And so this not only is going to get modified and widened and grade adjusted to be a ADA compliant trail, but they're actually also for maintenance purposes, they need 10 feet of clearance between the trail, the ground of the trail, and the height of the bridge. And so it's going to be this will be a reconstruction effort in this area. I don't know what that means for encroachment into the river or into this property, but I do know that they took a lot of care in the design to make this connection viable for everyone. Yeah. I'm also, I know I've seen it at one time. I haven't looked at it lately to know exactly what the ramp down. I think that basically if you need to get down here from Russell, you're going to have to come this way and then take a ramp all the way back down this way. So yeah, do kind of a big S curve to get down there. But again, that will meet ADA and be fully accessible. One of the other interesting things is River Road will become a right in, right out only at that time. And so that will also, as you can see here, there's pathway that people use. There will be stairs that go down from Russell Street down to there, and those stairs will include a channel for your bike as well. So if you want to continue on River Road, there will be a way. And it doesn't save you that much time, if any, if you're already on your bike. But if you're on foot, walking your bike in the channel. Yep. Yeah. No, walking your bike with your wheels in a channel up and down the stairs.
Somebody will ride the channel.
And so not only is the roadway reconstruction happening, but you might have noticed that as redevelopment happens along Russell, people are building pretty close to the roadway. All of those locations were strategically done to allow for the expansion of Russell Street and to have them then be kind of store-fronted buildings the way that like a downtown is. So this Russell Street was intentionally rezoned with a pedestrian overlay district to kind of put parking in the backside and have doors and some variety of things along the Russell Street frontage. The goal is that as redevelopment continues along Russell, when it's reconstructed, it will have a very different character and feel than it currently does today. That combined with the redevelopment in the Sawmill District, and there will be kind of pedestrian connection from West Side Lanes and the food bank all the way up through downtown. If there are specific questions about the project or project timeline, I would recommend emailing Shane Stack at MDT. This is a state-led project that the city has had a lot of influence on the design, but ultimately it's being managed by the state. Next on the agenda, Bitterroot Trail TA project. TA is Transportation Alternatives. So there was, sure many of you noticed this fall, there was construction and detours on the Bitterroot Trail. Intersection improvements happened at 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, Knowles, and 14th. So we'll start down here. The improvements included a minor bulb out on this side, and a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, a user-activated push button beacon that flashes a irregular pulse of amber lights at drivers that lets them know that people are crossing. So you can use that and get across. We heard within days we got compliments from people saying that drivers are much more attentive at this intersection in particular now. I think it will, be a little while before compliance is at approaching 100%, but it's still, that was a big improvement at that one. Now this was a grant project, Transportation Alternatives is a grant. Russell Street is maybe the busiest street that you have to cross in this area. We specifically did not pursue any grant funds for this because this crossing is part of the continuation of the Russell Street project once it goes all the way down to Mount. At Knowles, it includes a center median here that is mountable by very large trucks, not by average cars. The idea is that their loading docks are back here and their trucks do weird things in there. But that crossing has been shortened and made more visible. 6th Street and 5th Street both get rectangular rapid flashing beacons and some amount of bulb outage. 5th Street is really interesting because it's at an intersection, and so what happened here is that the trail actually got built in 2 places. This crosswalk for pedestrians still exists, but if you're continuing on that way or up this way, but then there's also a diagonal crossing for the trail since this is what all users did anyway. And so yeah, that's in place now and hopefully is reducing confusion. Definitely for trail users it has. I don't know if it's done the same for drivers. At 4th Street, a bulb out was added here to prevent parking within close distance of the trail. And then this also, I think the curb got extended a little bit so that the crossing distance has been reduced. At 3rd Street, the curb was extended a little bit and a rectangular rapid flashing beacon was added to, again, just draw driver attention to the fact that people are crossing. We would have liked to have done a little more on the north side. However, there's been a long-standing agreement with Spectrum Communications that their work trucks are allowed to exit this. And in fact, they had paid for this section of the trail being done in concrete and in a thicker standard than we normally require on our trails so that it could withstand truck traffic on it. Their drivers are professional and know that that trail crossing is there. They are not the problem with this location. If there are problems with this location, it typically is visitors to Spectrum who try and cram as many people as, they're paying a bill or something, so they think they're going to only be there for 10 minutes, so they park and half hang over the trail, that sort of thing. So with the hardscape improvements, there were also all the signage and striping was brought up to contemporary standards, including, brighter signs, downward-facing arrows, signs that include not just the walking person, but a bike on them as well. And so hopefully a lot more attention will be drawn to these crossings. That project was effectively completed in mid-November. City has taken it over. There's a couple striping things that need to happen in the spring still. But that project is largely done. Moving on with the Bitterroot Trail, so continuing further south, the other very, very exciting news is that the final piece is scheduled for completion this construction season. So currently the trail ends at North Ave and you're just kind of deposited there with an upside down map that's faded and kind of directs you through the neighborhood to get back over onto the trail where it picks up down at Livingston. Well, we've had approval from Montana Rail Link and even plans in hand for this 1 block segment between Livingston and South Ave. However, estimates when we went to get that part done, construction estimates came in at about triple what our engineering estimates were. So we said, no, we're not going to do that right now. Reasons for that, if we zoom in, there are, there's train track to remove, there's utilities to deal with. I think even part of this old loading dock needs to get shaved off to stay within our agreements with MRL. For a long time, this triangle parcel here was owned by Montana Rail Link, and they didn't really have an interest in doing anything with it. Well, I don't know what changed, but something changed last year, and they approached the city about parting with this whole parcel. And so the Missoula Redevelopment Agency was able to buy this parcel of land, and part of it as a gift was donated by MRL, and with the goal of completing the trail through here and creating a park on this triangle piece right here. So the park is under design, the trail has already been designed, and construction will start in the spring and be done by the fall. Now, there's still up in the air whether or not the trail will be constructed immediately and be done by June, or if it will be constructed, if the same contractor is going to get both the park and the trail, then they are going to have, if they get it, then they're going to have a little bit of discretion to work at a schedule that makes sense logistically for them, and then the trail might not be done until the fall, if that would be the case. But the trail goes through here. We'll start at the north end. It crosses North Ave with, again, similar attention paid to the crossing as was just done with the TA project, including bulb outs and updated signage. It comes through this part of the property. Right in this area, there will be a monument with a golden spike message, because this is kind of the meeting in the middle of the trail between Hamilton and Missoula. I mean, not the geographic middle, but the last piece. So we've actually have a little monument embedded in the trail with a mock golden spike, and commemorating that this is the kind of coming together of this. At this location, there will be a non-motorized crossing of the railroad tracks to connect with Central Avenue here. It'll come across the top of the park and then connect over with Central Avenue here. As you may recall from the Bike Facilities Master Plan, that is called out in the neighborhood greenway network. So that's huge that we're able to get that, and that MRL agreed to another non-motorized crossing of the tracks here. The trail will continue down in this direction. About right here, there will be another permanent counter, an eco counter added to the trail. And then when it gets to the intersection with South Avenue, pedestrians will be asked to cross in 2 stages, as they currently do. However, bicyclists will be able to cross at the diagonal. They will have a bike-specific traffic signal with a green bike symbol for when they get detected and cross. And they're going to get to go, they'll get the green at the same time that this left turn and this left turn get to go. And so that required studying and modeling to make sure that A, people turning here wouldn't be encroaching in the crosswalk, and B, that that you wouldn't unduly impact the level of service of not just this intersection, but this signalized intersection and this signalized intersection. And so what they found is that to add if we were to allow bikes and peds to cross here, it would have not only a lot of impact to these, but it would actually impact pedestrian crossing at all these other streets, because the platoon size would be so large when it did come down that your chances of crossing the street at these other streets would be reduced. You'd have longer wait times there. So it's not perfect, but it's innovative. It's the only or the first and only installation of its kind in Montana. But we were able to draw on experiences from Madison, Wisconsin, and from Portland, Oregon, to show that would work, and we've got approval. We're also going to trial a new surface for the bike lane through here, a melt-on green substance that it's not paint, they basically you adhere it to the surface of the asphalt by melting it on. It has grit built into it, and we're going to test it out. And so the manufacturer has offered us a deep discount on the installation as a trial, and so we'll see how effective it is, if it withstands frequent turning movements, and if it withstands the plows. It could be something that we pursue in the future as a new treatment in bike lanes.
Then a slightly related subject. The tracks there aren't used, are they?
They're not a frequent route, but it definitely is occasional.
Oh, okay. The reason I was asking is because when I ride I take Mount out to go riding on Big Flat Road from where I live, and crossing the tracks there, just you got the diagonal, so you have to kind of, if you want to cross the tracks perpendicular, which you like to, you kind of got to get out more into traffic than you might want to. So I was just wondering if there was any way to put in some type of a temporary fill, especially maybe on mount, so that there's not that groove in the tracks, that it could be pulled out when they start using it again. But if it's used occasionally and you never know when, I guess that can't be done.
They usually do like an engine and 2 cars, maybe once a month or every other month. And then actually earlier this fall, that kind of first big afternoon snowstorm we had, they actually ran a full-size train up this full length of tracks.
They were recovering some of the coal cars that were stored up the Bitterroot.
Yep. So this is very exciting to see this completed, and again, it gets brought down and picks up the Bitterroot, where it starts here.
What about that last stretch that you said? That the other stretch turned out to be more expensive than they thought. So is that happening too?
It is. So what we were waiting for was to get all of it, so that it wasn't super expensive for one block, but that it was it made it a little more economical to mobilize a construction company to do all the work, to do 6 blocks instead of 1.
Oh, okay. So we'll go through there. Cool.
Last item on my list is, I don't have a great update on this necessarily, just that there has been some discussion, my understanding, I haven't made it to the committee of the whole where this was discussed, but some discussion about our safety and education programs and how we present those to the public, and not just how we conduct them, but how we present them to the public might be where we need to do some work. We currently have the Bike Ambassadors program to directly engage with folks. We run safety campaigns at various times of the year, most recently the Lights at Night and the Mayor's Bike Lights campaign in the fall. In the spring, coinciding with Bike Month, we often do a Rules of the Road, not just encouraging people to get back out there and ride, but letting people know what they should be doing as if it's been a little bit of time since they've ridden a bike. And in the summer, we have pretty good ads about safe passing, both drivers passing cyclists and cyclists passing pedestrians on the trails that we run. We share those through, we have done TV ads, but we own the ads themselves, so we post them on Facebook with some regularity or with some frequency, and they're on the city's webpage. There's also an existing on the city's webpage here. There's a whole traffic safety channel, which has some in-depth videos kind of explaining road position and exactly what people are doing wrong. One way to get there is, why am I not seeing Media Center? Oh, here we go.
Podcasts. There it is, Media Center. Yeah.
So Media Center, there is a road safety channel, which has 12 videos in it. Some of these were made a while ago. Before I even had the job, I started in some of these videos. And so there's one about bike salmoning, riding against traffic in the wrong way. There's some encouraging people to ride the bus. And then there are these kind of what's wrong, so kind of slightly lengthy, 45 seconds is a little long for a TV spot, or a minute and a half for some of them. And so they kind of go into a little bit of detail as to what this person, what they did wrong. So this one is me swerving in front of Bob was driving, I think. Oh.
Good news.
Oh, no, there's Bob.
The bicyclist is wearing a helmet and bright colored clothing. The bicyclist is wobbling and swerving, even though he's in the bike lane.
What to do?
Did you see it? The bike rider has made a dangerous and illegal turn. First, he made no effort to see if a car was coming from behind him in the traffic lane. Second, he failed to yield to the car which was in the traffic lane. Third, he should have merged left to the traffic lane and made his left turn from there. Fourth, he did all of this without signaling. Finally, he turned to the wrong side of the street. You can see him going right next to the curb, opposite the direction of any cars which might be coming. He should always be riding in the same direction as traffic. It would be much better and safer if he had first looked, then signaled his intention to merge left. then moved left into the traffic lane and made a proper left turn. If he had done this, the driver would slow down and let the bike flow into the traffic lane.
So, yeah, and maybe not the highest tech or most, the city's website is not the most mobile friendly necessarily, but we do have resources available. We're also, we have videos that are newer than this that are shown in driver's ed classes, dealing with pedestrian and bicycle safety, specifically as it relates to different types of intersections. So T intersections or four-way stops or roundabouts or signalized intersections. And they also deal with people with either who are mobility impaired or vision impaired and some of the challenges that they face and how to drive safely around folks like that. Yeah, like I said, the bike map that we've given out probably 4,000 copies of in the last 3 years has the top 5 rules of the road and some tips and what to do in the event of a crash, that sort of thing. So I feel like we're providing a lot of education to cyclists and potential cyclists today. Could we do more? Yeah, probably. Where I think that our biggest room for improvement is putting this all together in a easily presentable place, easily linkable by anyone, and in a way that that gets at what we're trying to encourage people to do. This group has brought up a bike-friendly driver course, and that's something we'd be interested in. Gene individually has brought up like an online testing mod, basically a quiz that someone could take, and then maybe even a certificate that we could then send them, and then we would have numbers to say this many people took a quiz, that sort of thing. Currently, we're not opposed to any of these ideas. One of the things that is kind of guiding our current behavior or lack of action and really updating this stuff is that it hasn't been a super priority for us because the crash numbers continue to stay the same or even go down as we get more and more people riding bikes and more people driving around those people riding bikes in the city. I recently found numbers from the early 80s, and they had as many bike crashes reported each year as we have today. And so when the population was less than 50% of today's population, that is, in my mind, it means that we are going in a positive direction. One of the other shocking numbers is that the amount of bikes reported stolen in 1980 was double the amount that they're reported stolen today. I don't know if people reported them more that year or what, but again, if you consider 50% of the population, that's 4 times as many bikes being stolen as are currently being stolen today. But that was a little divergent. So the safety piece, I guess I want to continue to provide this group with updates about what we're doing. And Missoula in Motion and I are working this winter to kind of coordinate a safety calendar or something so that we can share that with you about when we do these different promotional campaigns. And we're always welcome to advice on ways to reach members of the public. But like I said, I don't anticipate a major overhaul unless there's a strong will from this board that we kind of divert attention from things that we are doing now to address that.
Sort of touching on the bike theft thing that you were just talking about. I had my bike recently stolen, and I called up the local shop where I bought it and got the serial number, and it was recovered within days, and then brought back to me by the police. And it was a really smooth, easy experience. The nicest way to get your bike stolen in terms of getting it back quite rapidly. I was thinking one issue that the cops were talking to me about was just the lack of people registering their serial numbers or recording their serial numbers on their bicycles. And he says that's the big issue that they're facing in terms of getting bikes back. You can say, I've got a red road bike, but that's not really going to help them that much, even if they recover it someplace. I know that what about the idea of, like, instead of just giving out bike lights at in the fall during this event, giving them out on the contingency that you take a picture of your serial number or write down your serial number or register your bike or something like that.
Yeah, so we do that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
Missoula, we have anyone who comes to our office to ask for bike lights, we ask them to register their bike.
Okay.
And so the 150 sets that we provide in police cars is a way for them to engage the public in a positive manner. But we give out about 2,000 light sets a year, and nearly all of those come with a registration. A few years ago, we tackled the issue of registration. It used to be mandatory. You know, it was in the city ordinance that you had to do it, and it cost you $10. And we made it optional and not mandatory, and we made it free, and we've seen a dramatic increase in the amount of registered bicycles. We used to actually get pushback from the bike shops when it was mandatory and cost money. They basically said, hey, this is Montana. We've just sold someone a $1,000 bike. We're not going to then turn around and say, oh yeah, you need to pay an extra $10 and the government needs to know that you own this bike. That just doesn't fly here. Now that it's optional and doesn't cost anything, all of the bike shops are encouraging people to register their bikes, or at least they did when we made a big push at the beginning of this. Now maybe we should go to them every 6 months and say, hey, are you still encouraging registration? But it's my understanding that that's something that they're still doing. So Logan might even have a better estimate of how many registrations we saw last year, but I want to say it's 450, something like that. And when it was mandatory and cost money, we'd only get about 300 to 350 registered each year. And the vast majority of those were people who qualified for free or reduced payment.
Ben, when you mentioned that, giving out the lights is great, and just jogged my memory. This time of year, especially when I drive near the university on Arthur, there's a lot of students and I guess other people crossing the street at night, dark clothes, nothing reflective. I'm wondering if there's any possibility of getting into a program of suggesting to pedestrians and even making maybe available these like Velcro bands that are reflective that people can put on by their elbow or above their knee or something when they're going out at night, so they don't have to worry about what they're wearing. They can always have something reflective on when they're on the streets, because with the wet streets and reflections from car lights, it's really hard to pick up pedestrians a lot of time. There's usually one or two near misses I have, unfortunately, during the winter. It's like, whoa, all of a sudden they're there. It's like you never saw them.
Yeah, we'd have to look at someone to partner with. The State Department of Transportation does have reflective armbands that they give out, but their whole statewide supply is fewer than we could give out in 3 months just at our office. So while they'll give us a handful or maybe even 50, they won't last very long at all. So we haven't looked into alternate suppliers. We haven't looked into purchasing them, but we definitely can, and that's something that we'll talk about when we put together kind of a calendar for safety stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking of getting maybe some sponsorship either through hospitals, insurance companies, or maybe even the university for something like that.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ben, and everybody. We got just a few minutes, so we'll cruise along and finish things out. But I appreciate you updating us on all that, Ben. Awesome projects going into 2018.
Oh, well, there was one more that was asked about at the beginning. Now I'm drawing a blank. What was?
Oh, it was the Hawthorne School 3rd Street annexation
School,
and
3rd
sidewalks.
Street. Yeah, so I saw that 3rd Street was annexed yesterday by City Council, or last night. It is my understanding that there are no plans to add sidewalks to 3rd Street between Reserve and Hawthorne School. If that changed between before last week and last night, I don't know about it. So I'll research that and let people know. Now, Hawthorne School will have to build sidewalks as around it as part of their update, its updates with the school bond. But as far as continuing them all the way out to Reserve, I don't think there are any plans to do that as of now.
Awesome, thanks. And thanks for Danny for bringing that up too. All right, well, any general comments, announcements from board members? Start with Peter.
I have nothing.
I have a question. If nobody knows, then I guess nobody knows. But it seemed to me like a car careened down Orange Street into the tunnel area. Did you see that? There's a tree down and all this dirt and snow, but no car. So I noticed someone cut the tree out of the way, but I was hoping maybe somebody knew what had happened. Okay. So be careful when you're walking on the trail. Someone could come off of Orange Street down on you.
I guess this is a minor point and doesn't really, it mainly pertains to me, but I have a course now that will conflict with this meeting. It's 4 to 6 every Tuesday, and it's my most important class, unfortunately. So I will be, I'll come to as much of the meeting as I can, and if it's a not super important class, I'll skip it, but it is like the most important class in my degree program. So I don't know what to do, but I guess I'll make do.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. And I think we do have the opportunity to tweak meeting times if we want to talk about that at the next COW. But awesome.
Is the April meeting on the 3rd, is that during spring break?
I think that's actually the week after.
Oh, really? I wanted to point out there is something that I wanted to share. An announcement is that we have the date set for the spring bike ped counts, and they will be Tuesday, May 1st, which will be a meeting date and time, and then Saturday, May 5th. Tuesday is from 4 to 6. Saturday is from noon to 2. Tara with the MPO will be sending out an email to the board to request volunteers, but something we might want to consider for next meeting is rescheduling the May meeting, moving that to the 8th, say, or something like that.
Awesome, thanks, Ben. And speaking of which, next COW, I want everybody to think about maybe some topics for 2018 or agenda items for next couple meetings, and we'll chat about that at that meeting. So that is on Tuesday, January 30th, 6:30 to 8, right here in the Jack Reedy room. And then our next full meeting, Tuesday, February 6th, 3 to 5. So thanks, everybody. This meeting's adjourned.